I have somebody with me today who wears so many hats. Let's talk about federal agent, author, podcaster, and also the co-founder of an organization called Badge of Honor. This is one woman who's even busier than me. Sam Horwitz, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much, Betsy. It's such a pleasure to be with you and appreciate your time and what you do.
Let's start with being a Secret Service agent. What led you to that?
Well, I went into law school intending on following in my father's footsteps, and he was a lawyer for the government in policy for Department of Energy. And after your first year of law school, you kind of make a decision on what you want your track to be. Criminology being where I really felt the most comfortable, but I got the chance to do an internship. And I met a bunch of different federal agents who were working. I was helping to handle evidence on a certain case. And I said, hey, maybe I'll dip my hat into this federal agent thing. Looked at the FBI and super happy that I ended up with the United States Secret Service. A lot of people don't know we wear dual hats. So we do investigations as well as protection. So I was assigned outside of DC in the New York field office and assigned to an investigative squad called the Electronic Crimes Task Force. So think of any crime you could commit with using a computer or any kind of electronic device. That's what we did. But with the UN being in New York City, we found most of our time doing protective work, and that's what I fell in love with. And it just was it would kind of threw people for a loop in law school when I said, nope, I'm going to the federal agent side. And I like to say I use my powers for good.
Now, because of where you were based and you were a federal agent, you're a 9/11/01 responder, correct?
Yes, I was front and center in the midst of all the action in Tower 1 when American Airlines Flight 11 struck it.
Right. And now, 20 years later, what, talk about that, about, looking back 20 years, what do you think about?
Well, I mean, it certainly was a journey. It changed my life, many of the lives of the men and women that I worked with. Our field office, which was in World Trade 7, was the last building to come down that day. And those kinds of incidents, tragedies, call it however you want to label it, it definitely changes the trajectory of your life. It helps you put into perspective the important things. We often, when we graduate college or finish our degree, we're like, yeah, it's all about me moving up, right? So the me factor is taken out, and you get this worldview of, wow, how do I want to operate in the world now? And it led me down a path I never thought I would experience. The evening of 9/11, I started experiencing what I came to find out is symptoms of post-traumatic stress. We weren't educated on it, in law enforcement these days. I think they do a little bit of a better job, but we formed a badge of honor to fill in a lot of the gaps, and we can talk about that. But I came to a point where my world was completely turned upside down. We're talking nightmares, we're talking anxiety attacks, stuff that I had never experienced before in my life. And nobody could help me navigate through it because nobody wanted to talk about the 15-ton elephant in the room. We were suffering together in silence. Here's the second largest field office in Secret Service gone. We're spread out all throughout the city. We had the anthrax attacks at the post office soon after. So we were a mess, to be frank. And I was sitting at my desk reading the same paragraph of a report that I had to hand in. And it was as if my brain just was not comprehending anything I was reading, and writing reports and doing paperwork, it was second nature for me, because I mean, that's what you do in law school. So this was stuff that would come real easy to me, and it just wasn't clicking. And I thought that I was going crazy, literally losing my mind. And I did ask for help. And again, nobody could really explain it. I made the very difficult decision to resign my position as an agent, something I worked really, really hard for and thought it was going to be my entire career. And so I left the agency in May of 2002. And I like to say I got my head screwed back on straight, but that wasn't until after post-traumatic stress took me down a very, very dark, lonely path, where I found myself sitting in my basement, getting ready to pull the trigger on my gun and call it the big man upstairs, whatever your belief system is. But my suicide attempts, I tried twice, got interrupted both times. The second time by my dog, who jumped in my lap, and that really kind of snaps you too. And I don't know if you're like me, but dogs are super incredible beings. They communicate silently through their eyes, and that's exactly what my dog was doing with me. And I swear he was saying, I need you, don't go. And that started a path to heal, to finally reach out for help. And through that, that is a learning process when you're diagnosed, which was a relief for me. Most people would be like, how the heck is post-traumatic stress and that diagnosis a relief for you? Because I knew what was happening. I could put a name to it. I could understand symptomology. And then I could understand how to get better from it, how to grow from what was happening to me. I had a skilled therapist who took me through EMDR, which is highly effective for treating law enforcement traumas. And now I find myself running an organization with my co-founder, who's a retired NYPD detective, and he has his own post-traumatic stress journey. And we're all about helping first responders build the resiliency toolbox, because we don't learn the way that general public learn. We need quick, fast, easy, a tactic, a tool, a resource that we can employ when the stress comes up, whatever the stress is from. Boom, head it off, go on to the next call. That's how our lives operate.
Well, so here's the thing. First of all, I have to tell you, I believe that dogs are an extension of God. And your dog proved it that day. I think a lot of people don't know, our citizens who support us don't know that we, law enforcement, die twice as often by our own hand as we do by felonious assaults. I mean, suicide in our profession, and we don't even count the attempts. Thankfully you're here to talk about it, but suicide is a horrible battle in our profession, isn't it?
Yeah, our brain health is affected from the minute we finish with the academy, because everything that we've learned, first of all, is to make sure that we go home every night to our families. But secondly, we look at life, the way we interact with people, in a very different way. And it's not to say we're trained to be suspicious. We're trained in hypervigilance. We're trained to notice things that most people just go through their day and they don't give it a second thought. And it's in that noticing, that situational awareness, if you will, that's where we can help citizens, supporters, our communities. That's where we save lives. That's where we see an accident waiting to happen. That's where we see somebody getting ready to be assaulted from behind. That's where we see the gun that the general public doesn't see. That's how we're trained. And I think over the years, there's been a kind of switch, if you will, that's been flipped, where the light is now shining on us, shining on the first responders, like we're doing something wrong by the nature of our training. And it's the nature of our training that's exposing us to all that bad stuff, that trauma, that ongoing hypervigilance, that we can't turn that off. And part of it is our training, but most of it is because we have a heart for service. And that heart for service, we don't care what color you are, what neighborhood you grew up in, what street you happen to be in when we stop you. We're doing our job. And for most of us in law enforcement, while we're doing that, the exposure to helping to save a family of 7 that's just been involved in that horrific accident, and God forbid, a child dies, that's what stays with us. It doesn't go away. So compound things like that for 20 years, 25 years, 30 years. Hey, we're in Texas. We've got guys serving, and I mean ladies too, when I say guys, 40 years. So can you imagine how to compartmentalize all of what we've seen? The brain was not meant to do that. There comes a point where you've got to address all of what you have seen throughout your career. And what we need are our citizen supporters to help us with that. We don't have an S underneath our uniforms. We really need to have a full understanding that you need us just as much as we need you.
Sam, what made you decide to publicly tell your story and then do what you're doing with Badge of Honor?
That is a question that takes me back into a place. It was 2 years post move to Texas. I moved from the East Coast. I grew up in Maryland, and I will never forget. I was invited to a church service to listen to Dave Reeder. He's a published, and he's done a lot of podcasts. He's talked about his story in Vietnam, and where he went to throw a grenade, and it was a phosphorus grenade, and it exploded in his hands. So he was literally on fire. And if you know anything about a phosphorus grenade, you can't throw yourself into water. It doesn't go out. Right. And so the body continues to reignite. And so he was burned of 95% of his body, not expected to survive, but he did. And as he's telling his story, and there's a lot of veterans and other first responders and family members in the audience, he made the statement, God gave me these scars so I can bear witness and give hope to others. And it was as if a lightning bolt hit me right there in that audience. And it's like, okay, people can't see my scars. My scars are up here. But that's when we go through significant trauma, like we've been through. That's what it's all about. I could not sit back and not tell my story because I could help somebody else. That's what Dave was doing. That's what a lot of first responders are doing. That's what a tremendous amount of veterans are doing. We're all united in this huge community. First of all, to say you're not alone. Second, to say, it's okay not to be okay. And with the Badge of Honor, we're like, we just don't want you to stay here. And here's how you don't stay here. And you've got to speak up for yourself. You've got to do the most courageous thing that you will ever do in your life. And it is not stepping in front of a bullet, and it is not running into a burning building. It's saying, I need help.
And it's so brave of you to be able to do that. And now you're moving forward and helping others. What's Badge of Honor doing to help first responders?
Yeah, Badge of Honor, we got our 501c3 status in the midst of COVID. It took a little bit longer in that process, but my partner, John Salerno, like I said, he's retired NYPD. He was also a firefighter, because you can do that in New York. So on the island where he's from, he served as a firefighter. And we decided that, again, we could not be silent with our traumas, with how our brain changed through our journey through dealing with post-traumatic stress. But again, it's not about, hey, I got this diagnosis and this is what I did. It's how do you grow out of the traumas? And that's exactly what we teach at a Badge of Honor. We provide an 8-hour interactive workshop. The officers that come through our workshop, they're in Texas, they get what's called TCOL credit. So it's continuing education for Texas law enforcement. And we feed you. You gotta have breakfast and lunch. You know, it's all about the food.
Kolaches in Texas. You got to have kolaches with your police training.
Well, you know, I have to give a shout out to our wonderful partners at Chick-fil-A. They come through every single time, as well as Dickey's Barbecue. They are heavily involved in supporting and backing our Blue. So they're right there providing barbecue for all the attendees. We provide all the materials, but again, it's helping first responders build that resiliency toolbox, letting them grab what they're connecting with throughout the day, that we're doing different exercises and teaching stress response tactics and saying, hey, you know, that resonates with me. I'm going to take that and put it in my toolbox. Because how many times have we been through conferences, you know, 1, 2, or 3 days, we got this notebook and we're scribbling and writing. And then when it's over, you know, we're back in our regular lives and it's like, wait, well, what was I supposed to do? And if you have to do that, we know, because we've been there, you're not going to utilize any of those strategies and tactics. They've got to be built through muscle memory, just like we train. And that's exactly how our workshops operate.
It sounds amazing. Now, you also wrote a book, right?
I did. It's called The Silent Fall. It is all about my 9/11 journey. It's as if I've got you by the hand and I take you from the minute I leave home that day on September 11th to getting home, what I discovered about post-traumatic stress, my diagnosis, again, what I did to combat that. And I was able to continue my career in law enforcement. A big thing is, you know, keeping that purpose, keeping that tribe together. And so I was successfully able to return to the job. One of our partners with a Badge of Honor, his name is Jeff. He is a current police officer, and he is the face of what it's like to be a police officer serving and also having this post-traumatic stress diagnosis. It's not the proverbial, death sentence for first responders, as most people think. And it's an education process for the brass, because the buy-in has to come from our chiefs all the way down through our training sergeants, and then all the way through our men and women on the front line. Because if you've got a training sergeant that is all about, yes, do this training, health, your wellness, your resiliency, your brain health is key for longevity in this job, but then you've got a chief that's got the old timer mentality, which is, suck it up, buttercup, which still exists, unfortunately. You've got a recipe for going nowhere, and the people that suffer is everybody in that department. And that's why we are seeing so much turnover in our police departments right now. Besides the fact that politicians are running our police departments, which that absolutely should not be the case. We need chiefs, just like we've got sheriffs that are standing up to say enough is enough. This is my house. I'm running my house. We need police chiefs around the country to do the same thing, to really take a very close look in the mirror. You were brought to these communities to serve and lead, number one, your troops, and so that they can, number two, be successful out there on the streets. Because if you've got a successful department, you've got a successful community, and too many communities around the United States are floundering, and it is mental health is being affected, and that is why we are seeing folks leave in droves. And I can't say that I blame them, but a badge of honor is there to help bolster your brain health and resiliency, so you can hang in there.
Where can people find out more about Badge of Honor?
You can go to abadgeofhonor.com, super simple website. We've got all of our events on our events tab. And if you want to register for our upcoming workshop, we are all over Texas. We are at a local department, Garland Police Department. If you've got, it may sound familiar, that's the department that took out the terrorists at the Caldwell Center. So right on Garland, and we are there on Veterans Day, November 11th. But if you would like us to come to you, we do private workshops, and it doesn't matter where you are in the United States. Reach out to us, we'll make it happen.
Awesome. Sam, thanks so much for spending time with us. And if you would like more information about the National Police Association, visit us at nationalpolice.org.
Put the gun down! Put the gun down!
Last year, law enforcement officers were involved in hundreds of thousands of use of force incidents. A use of force incident is when an officer must use nonverbal tactics to gain control of a dangerous situation.
Put the knife on the ground.
In many cases, officers have no choice but to use force when a suspect doesn't comply with a lawful order.
Use of force is always ugly. No one likes it, especially police officers.
Together, we can help de-escalate these dangerous encounters. Help police officers by complying with their lawful orders. Don't attack, attempt to disarm, or flee from an officer.
Use of force is an officer's last option. Most incidents can be avoided by not resisting arrest.
If you feel you've been wrongfully detained by a police officer, then seek a legal solution after the encounter has been resolved.
Let's keep everyone safe. Comply now and complain later.